Today I'm going to talk about how to run simple mediation test in Jamovi. So mediation is a kind of modeling wherein we want to explain the relationship between an independent variable and dependent variable using what we call as a mediator. So in this case, our independent variable is passion for sports, and our dependent variable is well-being. So assuming that the literature tells us that there have been evidences to suggest that being passionate for sports result to higher well-being, and we are curious why such relationship exists. What is it about passion for sports that leads to well-being? We can conceptualize a mediation hypothesis or a mediation problem by trying to investigate what could possibly link passion for sports and well-being. More specifically, we want to know what is the variable, which we call as the mediator, that serves as link in the relationship between passion for sports and well-being. And one can hypothesize that it might be sports participation. It's very much likely that those who are passionate for sports are likewise more likely to engage in sports. And when you engage in sports, the things that you get out of that also contribute to one's well being. So that is our problem. Now, aside from that, I want to talk about these relationships and what we call them. So, the relationship between passion for sports and well being, as it is, without accounting for any mediator, is what you call as the total effect. Now, after or when you account for sports participation, so this pathway, the effect of passion for sports to sports participation and the influence of sports participation to well being, you call this pathway as the indirect effect. This is the indirect effect of passion for sports on well being via sports participation. And after accounting for sports participation, whatever remaining effect passion for sports have on well-being, excluding the one that is accounted for by passion for sports, you call that residual effect as the direct effect. In some cases, students mistake this as the direct effect. We want to clarify that the effect of passion for sports on well being without accounting for the mediator is called the total effect. The effect of passion for sports on well being via the mediator or as accounted for by the mediator is the indirect effect, and whatever is retained, the effect of passion for sports on well-being, excluding that which is explained by sports participation, is called the indirect effect. So this is a simple mediation model, and another important thing when you test mediation is that these paths, we call them as paths, have particular labels. So this path, the pathway from your independent variable to your mediator, you call that as path A. The path from your mediator to your dependent variable is called path B. The path from your IV to your DV without sports participation is path C. So path C in effect is your total effect, that is your path C. And the direct effect, which is the effect of passion for sports on well-being beyond what is explained by sports participation, is this. Uh, and we read this as C prime. So that C with an apostrophe, that is C prime. So again, this is your indirect effect, your path A and path B. The indirect effect is thus called path AB or A times B. And quite literally, um, when we talk about numerical values that represent this indirect effect, it is basically the product of A and B. So when you multiply that, you get the indirect effect. Path C is your total effect. So this is the effect of passion for sports on well-being, assuming that there is no mediation yet. That is your total effect. And the effect of passion for sports on well-being when you have accounted for the mediator is path C prime. So that is the direct effect. Okay, let us now try to test this. All right, so this is our data set. So we have here uh, our variables. So this is our independent variable, passion for sports, our dependent variable, well-being, and our mediator, sports participation. So this is Jamovi. It is a free software which you can download and install in your personal computers. It is very similar to JASP. And to run the simple mediation model, you need to have installed the MedMod module or the MedMod module. When you open Jamovi for the first time, this is not available, so you have to install it. And to install it, simply go to Modules, go to the Jamovi library, and in the Jamovi library, there are a number of additional modules that you can install. And what we want is this module. Right now, it has already been installed, but if you haven't installed it yet, then you need to install this. So to run the mediation model, let us click on the MedMod module. Let's choose mediation. Let us enter our dependent variable, which is well-being, our mediator, which is sports participation, and our predictor, which is passion for sports. And what you have here are the pathways that we have talked about a while ago, the total effect. And when you break this down, this total effect is basically the sum of the indirect effect and the direct effect. So immediately what we are interested in is the indirect effect, because this is the pathway that shows us the mediation. So this, what is the indirect effect again? It is the product of A and B. And we can see here that it is significant. The direct effect, on the other hand, which is the residual effect of passion for sports on well-being after accounting for sports participation, is also seen here as significant. And take a look, our estimates are positive, so meaning to say higher levels of passion for sports predicts higher levels of well-being. And as for the total effect, which is this one, so the effect of passion for sports on well-being, that is also significant. So I guess the better narrative would be that passion for sports does have an influence on well-being, but the effect of passion for sports on well-being is via two ways. Indirectly, passion for sports influences well-being via sports participation, and we saw that to be significant in our mediation output. But even after that, passion for sports still has an influence on well-being. So the effect of passion for sports and well-being is not completely explained by sports participation, because even after accounting for sports participation, passion for sports still has an influence on well-being. And this situation is what we call as partial mediation. So partial mediation is when there is indirect effect, but even after the indirect effect, there are still significant direct effect. Partial mediation is contrasted with full mediation. There is full mediation when, after accounting for the effect of passion for sports on well-being via sports participation, we no longer have a significant direct effect. Passion for sports no longer influences well-being because the influence of passion for sports on well-being, much of it is explained by sports participation, and there are no more residual effects. That would be full mediation. But right now, what we are seeing here is a partial mediation. To give us more information, let us click on path estimates. Okay, so the path estimates. So here we have here our individual paths. To make this even more clear, let's click on the labels. So the labels will tell you the exact pathway. So our path A, as we have shown in our illustration, is the influence of passion for sports on sports participation, and we find that to be significant. Path B is sports participation to well-being. This is path B, so this is also significant. And for there to be mediation, it is very important that this pathway is significant and that this pathway is also significant. Whereas passion for sports to well-being, which is actually, this is C prime, not only C. I guess the module can still be improved by specifying this as C prime, because that might confuse the ones who are using this module. So this is actually C prime. That is the direct effect. So you will notice that the estimates here, 0.254 is exactly the same here. So this is the direct effect. So that is the residual effect of passion for sports on well-being after accounting for sports participation. The C here is actually this one, the total effect. Okay, so it's basically C prime plus AB. Okay, and this is our indirect effect. The indirect effect is the product of paths A and B. So if you actually multiply 0.866 with 0.554, what you'll get is 0.480. So what you can do, if you are, so one, you can use this table in your report. Another way to do it is actually to create a figure like this. Okay. So this is our total effect. I'm not sure if I have the values correct. Let's check. So let's change the values. That's not the values. The total effect is 734 actually. By the way, it's important to note that these estimates are unstandardized. So 0.734. Okay, so that is our total effect. Our total effect 0.734. Okay, our direct effect is 0.254. So this should be our C prime, 0.254. Okay, our path A is path A 0.866. Yes, that is correct, 0.866. I placed an asterisk to indicate that this is significant. and our path B is 0.554, which is what we have here. Okay, so this one is our total effect, and this one is our direct effect. And this is the product of 0.866 and 0.554. So this is our indirect effect. That is our AB. Let's double check 0.480. Yeah, so let's round it off. 0.480. Okay. Now, if we click on confidence interval, right now, what is important is that this is significant, our indirect effect. Another evidence that it is significant is if we look at our confidence interval. Let us uh, replace this with the values from Jamovi. So the confidence interval is, so the lower bound of this value is 0.427. So 0.427, and the upper bound of this confidence interval is 0.534. 0.534. Okay. So this is another evidence that this value is significantly different from 0, that this value is significant. And the evidence is that within that interval, within the upper bound and the lower bound, 0 must not be a possible value. So that means to say that this product is a point estimate, but within its confidence interval, 0 is not a possibility. Of course, we are saying that with a 95% confidence. I'm saying this because in other software such as the Haze process, which is an add-in of SPSS, this is the primary basis to say whether or not our indirect effect is significant. Such software do not produce p-values. So this is our primary means of determining whether this value is significant. Aside from the significant or the p-value here, another evidence for the significance of the indirect effect is that the lower bound and the upper bound of the confidence interval does not have 0 between those values. So how do we make sense of the result? So the result basically is implying that one, passion for sports does have an influence on well-being, and that is without accounting for sports participation, as evidenced by our total effect, which is significant. But more than that, it seems that the effect of passion for sports on well being is because of the fact that those who are passionate for sports are more likely to engage in sports participation, as evidenced by our significant path A. And when they engage in sports, that actually leads to well being, as evidenced by our significant path B. And when we multiply these pathways, we get this, which is significant also based on the p-value, and also significant based on its confidence interval. But even after accounting for sports participation, we also learn that there is still something about passion for sports that still influences well being that is not accounted for by sports participation, as evidenced by. Oh, sorry, I got it wrong. This should be 0.734, and the C prime 0.254. Okay, so as I was saying, Even after accounting for sports participation, passion for sports still seem to have an influence on well-being, as evidenced by the residual effect. So that concludes our demonstration of mediation using Jamovi. I hope that you learned something and see you in the next video.